let's learn how to animate this entire character scene inside of Adobe Animate 2020.
TipTut.
You can download the resources for this tutorial by going to www.tiptut.xyz and clicking on the resources page. This series was recorded during the coronavirus scare, and due to spacing issues in the house, we'll have no webcam. Sorry about that, but hopefully you can still learn something from this tutorial series. Hello everybody and welcome back to TipTut, and welcome back to this animation concepts, animation process series. Still haven't quite decided what I'm going to call it. Probably just my animation process. Last time we created this little floating character, we went over things such as movement arcs, wave principles, and parenting and stuff like that. I will say the way I did this is overly complicated. Making a null, which is this yellow object up here, and then individually layer parenting each of these characters to it, probably was overkill. The only reason I did that is because I may want to take this into After Effects later, and I'd want all these individual elements to be separate. The easiest way to do it, of course, would be to select all these layers, change that into a symbol, and then just move the symbol. The only reason I didn't do that is because, like I said, I want to keep it separate so that I can experiment with some stuff in After Effects later on. With that in mind, let's just crack on. And today we are taking a look at the second scene of this project, which if you go to your scenes palette, you'll find under scene 2. And if we just scrub through our footage, we'll see that our little character falls onto the floor and starts to roll off the screen. Now, if we play through this at the moment, it's very fast. And that's because we animated just the keyframes. So these are the main positions that we want our character to land in during this animation. So what we're going to go through first and do is just go and create these little keyframes as sketch layers. So at the moment you can see we have 5 layers. We have a sketches layer, legs, hair, face, body, and background layer. So I'm just going to select all of the layers on this character here and just pop them in a folder. And we're going to call this main. We're going to make 4 layers above that, or 5, doesn't matter. Another folder. We're going to call this guide. Now these layers we're just going to use, this folder system here, we're just going to use to lay out all of our characters' elements and maybe draw the arc paths that you saw in the last episode and things like that. If you don't know what that is, an arc path is one of these, where we indicated where all the keyframes and such would take place. Just hide those again. And then this folder here is going to be where we actually draw the final elements, like our little character chappy. So we're just going to hide that for now. We've already got the first keyframe, so we're not going to bother redrawing that one. But we will come through and redraw these other keyframes because eventually we don't want to be relying on this sketch. You can ignore that error. That's just a custom setup. You won't get that error. So quickly come through then, and we'll just sketch out. Now this is just rough because it's just an indication of where we want it to be. And we've already got these keyframes in place. So I'm just going to come through quickly and sketch these out. So I will just fast forward through this process for you. Okay, so now as you can see, we have our keyframes in place, drawn on a single layer. What this means is we can hide our sketches layer. And the reason I did that is just so that we've got an editable version of each of those sketches, whereas the sketches I brought in before were just a video that I'd imported from a different bit of software. Now that we've got these keyframes, however, you'll find that the motion itself is way too quick. And that's because we haven't done any of the in-betweening. So what we're going to need to do is give ourselves a lot more space and time to work with. So we're going to space out these keyframes so that they feel more realistic. For example, this movement here is probably going to be quite quick. Is it going to be that quick? That's a lot of movement in one space. I think we're going to need at least another keyframe there. Okay. So what we'll do for now actually is we will not add in clear keyframes. We will hit F6 to add in just another hold keyframe. I think between here and as soon as he hits the ground, that's going to have to hold in this position for a long time, okay? So, because he's going to be settling into that pose before he starts to twist around to the other side and come back up again. Once he comes back up, he's going to hold into the air for a bit. So we'll add some frames there. And we'll just add in a load of background frames as well so that the background stays there. Turn off that loop. Starts to hold. Maybe not quite so long there, actually. Maybe let's remove that. And then flattens and flattens. Squishes down. Tell you what, just to make it a bit more easy to follow visually. Oh, excuse me, this stupid bug as well. There we go. We will go to transform, flip horizontal on this guy, and we'll just quickly turn on onion skin. And we'll just do that. That looks a bit better. Just perhaps that should have been a keyframe that wasn't there. That looks pretty good to me now. Boff, boff. And obviously we're going to come through and tweak this as we go. But that looks like a more realistic movement to me. Excuse me. As you heard in the disclaimer at the beginning of this video, this is actually filmed during the big coronavirus thing. And I'm not feeling too great at the moment, so I'll be coughing a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. Cool, so we'll use those as the keyframes. Now that we have these keyframes, however, I'm not going to just go ahead and draw the entire character for every frame. What I'm going to do is try and separate that out as much as possible. So say, for example, I'm going to, well, first of all, we'll just remove all these extra frames so that we can have a nice, more easier loop. And I'm just going to work on the body. I'm going to separate out all of these elements, okay? So I'm going to choose myself a nice big bold color. Doesn't matter what it is because it's just a guide at the moment. So maybe I'll choose red. The first thing I'm going to work on is the shape of this body, okay? So I'm going to come through and on every second frame, I'm just going to add a keyframe because we now need to draw the body during every stage of its process, okay? We're going to outline and lock that layer. We will just change the color if we can, just by double clicking there. And we'll make it a more visible color against the sky. Yeah, much better. And I'm just going to come through and I'm really going to try and be careful with this one. So no more just haphazardly drawing lines. Doesn't matter if you got like a little bit of offshoot and stuff because we're literally just drawing the guide at the moment. And you got to think about the direction of the body as well. So if we draw ourselves in a little sphere guide as well, that will help. So now if we turn on our onion skin tool, which we do have on currently, we'll have to unlock that layer above to see the onion skin. So we'll just be careful not to draw on that. So you can see at the moment here, his body's stretched out a little bit more. It should continue to be stretched on this frame. So obviously this one I just drew really roughly, so I'm going to come through and try and draw this a bit more smoothly now. That means the in-between for that frame will be pretty much directly in between those two. So what I could do is just draw over this frame here to make sure that the mass stays roughly the same. Then select, see there, we selected the wrong layer. So I could just then position that in between. Cool, that's pretty good. So the next keyframe is at this point where the guy's got squished. I'm pretty happy with the way he squishes here, but I think what I want to do is push this just a little bit further and just have him go completely leaning him a little bit towards this side because that's the direction he's coming from. So like the arc of his body is still like this. Yeah. And then this way, what we can do then is have this edge start to pull up and tuck under itself, but still end up at the same position over here. And that's for that kind of consistency of mass and direction of movement. You can see that looks a bit more, if we hide this layer, that looks a bit more realistic in the way that it bounces, yeah? It kind of gets a bit smaller here. That's obviously an accident where I was drawing. But I think the real accident is that he gets bigger at this point. So I'm just going to hold Control to adjust one corner here. Yeah, that's better. Because I prefer this character at this size. So coming through. Making sure to maintain a pretty regular mass. Obviously there's squash and stretch involved, but that looks pretty much the same. So again, not just blindly following what was there on the previous frame. We've got our sphere here. He's starting to fall and trip. So his weight starts to shift down, which means his face starts to turn up. Boom. Now there's a keyframe missing. So we'll draw the next keyframe. And he's flat against the floor here. Nice. Then we can just see the line of his face like here. So this kind of curved motion still needs to be intact because we can see that from this position to this position is quite a big jump. So we'd need to, first of all, move his center of mass between those 2 points, but maintain this kind of curve here. So he'd probably end up something like flat along the bottom, something like that. But I think with more of a weight coming down. So that looks like. That looks pretty good. We'll use that for now. I will just lock this layer so I don't accidentally erase any of it. Just get rid of these bits. I think that bit looks weird though, so we'll just flatten that out. So again, it's experimenting as you go, really. He's going to hit here and then keep rolling. So we'll need his body to rise up. Now at this point, it's important to make sure that this doesn't look like it's floating. Okay, so the point of contact still needs to be here, which is why we've got that crossover point on his little snorkel later. We're not drawing the snorkel at the moment. We're just drawing the body. Go off the stage with your drawing. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean you shouldn't draw it. It's going to help to give you a sense of where this guy is still. So we're actually a frame ahead there, rather stupidly. So I'll just shift that one over. That was an accident. And we'll draw this in between. I'm going to leave this layer locked, but off of its wireframe view at the moment, because that's actually quite useful. Because we're drawing in red, it's really easy to see, yeah? So we've got this part of his body is going to have to start to peel off the floor. So his body's going to be definitely shifting along and definitely morphing a little bit. And I think his face ends up, yeah, completely forward and upside down. So we'll just do something like that. Yeah, let's hide that layer. That looks good. That has like a nice whipping motion to it. Oomph. And then the last one is a new keyframe. which you can't see him. So we'll literally just have him go like that on the edge of the screen. Okay, let's take a look at what that looks like a bit zoomed out without the distracting character on top. So we'll just go back to show frame. Nice. So now that we've got these keyframes, it's a bit easier to see where it needs to hold more. So this guy's dropping, that looks fine. Still dropping, I think he needs to stretch a little bit. So we'll just pull out just a touch more. Whoosh. Then here, however, we'll need to add in definitely just a little squashing keyframe. And then here, that definitely needs to rotate out a bit more to keep that line consistent. Boing. And because it squashes and stretches, let's try that on a 1 instead of a 2. Try this one on a 1 instead of a 2. No, that looks too quick. So you can see there's a bit of trial and error. Hit, stretch, both. That I think just needs to be just a little bit more extreme. So we'll move the anchor point and we'll just stretch this guy out. Maybe we'll have him lift off the floor a little bit. Yeah. And then I think here we just need one more frame of it hanging in the air just a little bit. So we'll come in here and we'll add F6. Just so that it kind of hangs for that one frame. Yeah, much better. Boing, boing. And I think we need one here too. Because it's going to come back up, right? So it comes down, it hangs, it squishes. And I think just one more frame here. Where it stretches before moving on. Actually, no. Do we like that? Or is that rubbish? I think that might be rubbish. That looks good. Boing, boing. Or it looks good enough. Good enough for the government. All right. Boing, boing. Sweet. So now we have all of our frames for the body. We can go straight ahead and start drawing in the rest of our character. So we've got the body. Let's do the snorkel now. Those are the main points. And what we'll be doing in this episode is doing all of the wireframing with you. And then because drawing the actual character, drawing this guy is literally just tracing over it neatly and coloring it in, I'll probably fast forward through that bit. Let's leave the background on so that we can make sure he is touching the ground and stuff. And let's just grab all of these guys here. And add in some keyframes for us. Right, so now let's grab a different color, maybe a bright green. And let's start drawing our snorkel. Now, obviously, we can come straight through and on all the keyframes that we do have it, we've got a nice indication of where that snorkel should be. Just making sure that it connects up with the body nicely, basically. So I am going to come through quickly. But I'm also going to be tweaking based on what these new drawings look like, yeah? This snorkel might be flapping in the wind a little bit. So it's got a curve this way, and then on this frame, it's got a curve going this way, yeah? So here on this mid frame, it might be a bit more straight. Now here, the snorkel's got completely squished. Stretching, bam. But as it hits, I feel like this would still be stretching out. And then by the second time, it would really be bulging like this. And then as it's moved this way, it would actually be whipped behind because it's being pulled along. And then by this point, it would start to whip back round. And you can see I already had that thought when I drew these other keyframes. Now, obviously, when we come to do the final thing, this will actually just be one layer. Let's have it sort of bulge a little bit there. You can see how that looks a bit more realistic. It's called secondary motion because it's moving off of the movements of a primary object, in this case, the body. So you can see that it doesn't exactly follow the movements of that first object. Yeah. Here it's got its own life as it's twisting. Here it's stretching out still because although this is impacted, this is like a tail. Yeah. It's like if you throw one of those little rockets. It's got like a one of those little rockets. It's like, oh, it's locked. I don't want to draw on that layer. I'll draw on this layer. Thank you. One of those little rockets. It's like a ball, and then on the end of it, it's got like one of these things. You've seen them? Maybe they look like this. Yeah, and you lob them to each other like a frisbee or whatever. It's like that. Yeah, this is going to have a different physics motion than this section. This is heavy and it's weighted and it's at the front and it's going to drop. If that then hits the floor, those things might flare out like so. Yeah, that will be the secondary motion. So it squashes. It's pulled back this way. Continues to be pulled back that way. At this point, it might start to flare out more, yeah? We don't have a guide for this on this other layer because it's already in that previous pose. So I'm going to say it would start to flick. Just a little bit. And as it hits this area here, it'd start to straighten out. And then it's going to start to hit the ground. So it'll curve more as his body whips round. Boom. Now at this point, I'm going to have it do a really big smear. And a smear is when you, like if you took a square and then you had the square move to like a different point. Instead of just drawing the frame in between like this, if you wanted to indicate a really fast movement, you could draw the frame in between like that and stretch it out. Yeah, and that's called a smear. And that's what I've done there. I've thickened it up because I want it to really whiplash into position. Because at this point, it's going to be really crunched in. So you want to get that emphasis. Bosh. And then when it comes up, it's really heavy. And then we don't need one for that frame, I don't think. So let's hide our original. You can see how that really helps, that little snap, whipping around. It's going to keep whipping. In fact, I think here it'd actually be even more. Because it's like attached to a tail attached to a ball, yeah? And the ball is rotating. Boom. Boom. That would force it closer. Boom. That would force it closer still. So let's try like a really... And then it might start to fan out. Looks good. I like that. May not be perfectly accurate, but that's because I'm not a very good animator. So, all right. The hair and the legs we can probably do on one layer, if we're honest, because we're not going to have to worry about the wave principle on this one, because it's going to be moving too fast. So I'm just going to hide this guy for now, because we have the rest of our body, so we don't need that too much. And this one I'm just going to kind of play by ear. Remembering, of course, that this hair will be affected a lot by the wind. So as our character starts to move faster, it would wave less and it would come up more. And then here at this point, it would definitely be really rocketing upwards. Only to go really down. Boosh, 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 boosh. To then be really whipped over, yeah? Now at this point, because of the rotational force on it, you probably wouldn't see the hairs behind, but you definitely see these hairs, and they'd definitely be like curving upwards like that. Still being forced over by the wind that way, yeah. At this point, you probably see these hairs again. And then at this point, because of the impact here, they might start to flip this way. Like so. And then start to be pulled down again. Which means you probably wouldn't see those far side ones. Start to stretch out as they get pulled along. And then here, like so. So look at that. Yeah, that's good. And you can see we're adding these little bits here is where it really starts to come to life. Do they come off of his head at some point there, though? Oh, no, it just looks like it because that arrow I've drawn. Okay, that's good. Let's quickly draw the legs. Might as well do them on their own layer. Quickly get a guide for what they look like. Now we had, in the previous shot, he had his right leg down by the end of it. So we definitely want his right leg to be down there. Now it's going to be moving along. Disappear here. And then they come out stretched. And then they just kind of stay crooked all the way through. That's fine. So let's follow that. Let's grab a different color. Maybe yellow. And let's just hide this guide layer for now. Because as you can see, it's already confused me. His legs are in the middle of his body. Thank you very much. And this is just about maintaining the similar, at least, lengths of the legs. Yeah. So you might use your pen just to quickly gauge it. Like, for example, that one's a bit too long. So you can squish him down a little bit. Now at this point, we really want this leg here to be stretching out as if it's reaching out to the floor. And that's called point of contact. You overextend to emphasize the smash that it's about to be. I think what we'll do for this one will be quite funny is if we have his legs up like this. Like he's just landed straight on his butt. Now, because this is like a hold frame, we'd probably just have the legs go up a little bit more to emphasize that impact he's just had. And then this one, we'd have the butt doesn't really move position. It moves this way a bit. So we'd have his legs start to turn. Like that, yeah. And then as he's leaving the ground, this one would start to trail. And this one would start to keep turning. So that it was facing right, yeah. Now it's facing left. I kind of want to leave this leg roughly in the same place. And then have this leg extend a little bit. And that'll give us a nice little bit of follow through. So that when we have this movement here, I think I figured out why he looks weird to me. He comes in, whoosh, and he comes off here at quite an angle, but then he doesn't really move very far across the page, yeah? So that's a move far movement. And that, he just sort of turns, just fine. But let's have him a bit more like that. Yeah, that's better, smoother. And then here, let's have him more like that. Sorry for the silence here. I'm just figuring stuff out. That looks a bit better. Wing. Cool. So here is now his body now doesn't move too much, which is good. That's what we want. So his legs might just move up slightly. And then on this one, they're going to start to turn back in on themselves as he starts to come back up into a roll, so that he's pretty much arse over tit, as my dad would say, on this frame. And then this one here definitely needs to move. Keep in mind to keep this point here in roughly the same place. Yeah, that's better. So his legs would still be all squished up on his body. And on this frame, you might just see the edge of a leg, but probably not. All right, let's look at that. I think it's because he doesn't go high enough here. Whoa. Like, let's save it, just in case I hate everything I'm about to do. I think at this point he might need to go higher. And then generally higher. And then that can still land, but we'd need to have then a keyframe here that is between. Yeah, that's better. So he's going to land then. And then this needs a squashy, and perhaps a skewy. Much more of a squashy. And then that can shift over a bit. Boom. That frame can go. Yeah, boing. Yeah, you just need a bit more of a hold frame in midair there. So we've got this. His body here, though, now will not be like that. The body shape is fine. But this little bit here, because in the next one he's looking up, would have to go more like that. Oops, let's be red first of all. Like that. Let me remove this frame entirely. Yes. Just rotate and squash. Yeah, that's the ticket. Boing. Perfect. So as you can see, bit of trial and error, and you're good to bloody go. So let's, we can probably just delete this layer now, but we need the face still, I think, just for guidance. So let's loop this guy and have a look at what we have made so far. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's try one more squish frame. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I think I'm very happy with that. We can do his legs though a bit better. So let's select his leg color. He gets squished. His legs come up more. And on this one, his legs still need to be coming up more, which obviously they're not because we just squished the frame. So we can have them come up. Like this. Off, and then they'll get stretched out. Yeah. Nice. Make sure we're actually adding in that last frame now. All right, that looks pretty good. Right, the last step then will be the face. So I'll add a new layer here. And now that we've got all of our timings and we're happy with them all, we can literally just go through and add a face. So let's do that. I am going to use the general faces from this guide here, and I'm going to need a new color. Let's have fuchsia pink. Oh no, we did that for the hair. Let's have Oh, we've run out of primary colors that aren't blue. Let's use blue because we'll be turning off the background now anyway. There we go. And I'm just going to come through and draw this face. So at this point, he's still determined. He's like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to hit the ground well. But what I'm going to do now is use the cross that I've made here, because I'm happy with the way that cross moves. I'm going to use the cross that I've made here as the guide. So roughly the middle of his face is going to be roughly the middle of this cross. And we're going to see what that looks like. And we're just going to go straight ahead on this one, I think. Because what that allows us to do what we could do actually is just this bit of the face here is going to be roughly the same in each one. Maybe his eyebrows get a little bit closer as he prepares for the impact, yeah? So we can nab this face. Oops, I just took everything. I could have just selected the layer. And we'll pop him in the middle. Maybe actually his face starts to move up a bit as like he leans back for preparation of the impact. Same thing for here. So we could probably do is actually just copy that face. But with the mouth, we'll just have that start to open. As he's like, oh, this might not have been a good idea after all. Because on this one, you can see that he's got the face there. And this one, he's got the grimace impacting face. Maybe I do like that. Yeah, maybe we'll have a grimacy impacting face brush rather than that slightly closed one. Obviously, the body has moved now at this point, and I'm putting their face way further up the head. But if we just have something like this, I think that'll look good. Off, and at this point is impact. So his entire face needs to squash and stretch. Everything tilts up a little bit, yeah? Like his eyebrows, all of this, even this bit. That makes him look a little bit happy though. So maybe we'll just have this one go like that. Oof. Now here, we just want the whole face to be a bit more squished because it's now getting like the impact, the squash and stretch. So we'll just have him come a little bit wider. And we'll move everything just a little bit, and we'll rotate it just a little bit as well as it prepares. Because his mass would kind of then just like hit the ground off like that. At this point, it's the same thing, but a little bit further down. So it'll be copying and pasting. Now, obviously on the final thing, we won't copy and paste anything. We'll draw each final frame. But for these guides where it's practically the same, but just a little bit different, it really doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned. Boosh. And then at this point is where he's going to start to get shocked, yeah? So his eyebrows are going to get whipped back up. And people are going to look at the face the most. So we'll have him really stretched out. Oh, like this. And it'll make his pupils go really small because he's in shock. Okay, so at this point, his eyebrows can kind of return to a normal shape. Actually, let's have him facing the other way because he's in shock. His eyes are kind of returning to a normal shape. They might be a little bit stretched still. His mouth is wide and in fear. Check what the original one was like. Yeah, the same, but with teeth. I'll decide if I want teeth in a bit. This one's going to be roughly the same, so we'll take a similar shaped face, apart from we'll maybe make the eyes a touch bigger and the mouth wider and flatter to really emphasize that fear. And then once it's in position, we'll squash it to make it look like it's in perspective. Keeping in mind where his hair is, where his face is. Here, there's going to be a bit of an impact again. So as he prepares for that impact, we'll have his eyes start to squish. And then here, it's completely impactful. And I remember on this one, we did it like that, as if his mouth was at the top, yeah? Boff. So let's actually use that one as a guide. That's what the edge of his mouth is going to look like that. He's going to have his teeth. He's going to have an eyeball. And this other eyeball like sticking out. And some sad eyebrows. And then this one, he's started to lift up a little bit. Oh. So he's going to need his eyes and mouth in roughly the same place. And then this one is completely upside down. Drawing upside down faces is hard, so if you wanted to, you could just spin him around. That was Shift H there to spin him. And then he's back to his eyes being normal. But we'll keep this kind of face that he's got, because that hurt more than he was expecting. This one we can probably just copy this face. Have to straighten it up a little bit so it's a bit more square. And then obviously on that one we don't need a face at all. Let's look at what that looks like. One thing I've noticed is that this snorkel at this point would kind of flick down more, and it doesn't. Off like here between this frame and this frame. If I grab my snorkel, and I think at this point it just needs a bit of a smear, that's all. I'll need my green though. So we'll eyedropper that green. I think it's this frame. We'll just have it really start to see what that looks like. Yeah, and then here, off. And this impact. It'd be like that. Yeah. So it would slap the floor and then definitely not come back up that far. Maybe up a little bit as it bunches, maybe. You'll definitely sort of bunch there as it folds. And then that's fine. Yeah, that gives it much more of an impact. Woof. Bish, boff, bish, bloff. Okay. So, as far as I'm concerned, that is this scene animated. Boom, boom, boom. All we need to do now, excuse me, is go through and draw the final pictures, which, like I said before, I'm going to do in time lapse because it's literally just going to be me coloring this guy in. There's no paint selections, there's no clever stuff like that going on. It's all just own layers. So a separate layer for every separate element of the body, which you can see we've already got legs, hair, face, and body. For the mouth, you might have to use paint selection. So I'll just take you through that quickly, using one frame as an example. So say for example, the face here. Yeah. He's got his mouth closed here, but there's points where the blacks of the eyes and the whites of the eyes are occupying the same shape. So let's, for example, say we had the whites of his eyes. You would draw. There we go. You draw the eye. You could use the paintbrush to fill it in. Then if you go to your properties panel with your paintbrush selected, you can choose paint selection from here. Okay. Choose a different color. And then whatever you have selected, when you paint, it will only appear in that selection. Yeah. So then of course you can deselect and use the paint bucket tool to fill that. That's how I did the eyes. The mouth is a very similar procedure. Okay. So you'd make sure you're on paint normal. You'd paint the outside of the mouth, fill it in. Then you'd want to do the tongue. Okay. So you'd go to paint selection, grab a pink color, select it, paint the tongue, fill it in. Then if you wanted to do teeth on top of that, you just choose your teeth color, paint select, it's fine. Select both of these, draw your teeth on top, deselect them, fill it in. Okay, that's probably the only bit you might need a bit of explanation on. The rest is literally just draw the shape of the body neatly, fill it in. Yeah. So with that in mind, let's jump into a time lapse and we'll see you on the other side of this excellent cartoon that we've just made. Okay, quick jump out of the time lapse here just to say that I did tweak the hair as I came in. Nothing too drastic. The minor changes that I did were as the guy lands here, I realized I didn't really add the same concepts that I did to his snorkel as I did to the hair. As in, at this point, all the force is being applied upwards on this hair. Yeah, it's being forced upwards by the speed of his drop. Then as he hits, however, the hair would stay anchored at the point where it joins the head, and all of the rest of the hair would kind of start to whip downwards, yeah? And then snap as it moves. Snap, snap, snap. So you can see that that's going to land downwards and snap. So that's the change I made to the hair. Additionally, I added some little folds on a separate layer for when he squishes and when his body starts to bunch up a little bit. Nothing much, just a little bit of extra detail there to indicate what's going on with the shape of his body. Apart from that, I'm pretty happy with it. Just got the legs and the face to do. So we'll crack on with that now. Okay, and there we have it. Wow. As you can see, quite a long, involved process, but also, as you can see, the details are really where this comes to life. Things like, for example, on the frames where he's grimacing his teeth, you can see like his gums on that layer, and also on these layers too, and also like the pupils of his eyes turning into little spirals, that sort of thing. That's what really adds like a level of interest to the animation, along with things like the animation of the hair and stuff bouncing as well. If you wanted to, you could add a camera to this scene and see if you want to do like a little zoom out from him outwards. I think if you just hit C, it will create a camera. You could adjust this camera, for example, zooming in like so. And then just adding a classic tween. Maybe you could then adjust the easing of that classic tween. Like so. Boom. That might look good. Let's see what that looks like with the rest of the scenes. Obviously, the last three aren't going to be animated, but we go. Boom. Push. So obviously ignoring the rest of these frames at the moment, but that looks pretty nice. Bam. That looks pretty nice too. Well, that is it for today's tutorial. I really do appreciate you guys sticking around. This was a long one, but all of these are going to be long ones. That's the entire point. We're going into complete detail on how to animate this little sequence that we've got here. So do appreciate it. I'll see you next time for the next episode of this animation process series. And otherwise, have a great time. Try not to go crazy during the quarantine. And I'll see you next time on TipTut.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.